Halloween night 2022. The town of Maple Hollow sat under a soft orange haze, the air thick with chimney smoke and the sweet smell of burnt pumpkins. Plastic skeletons dangled from porches, motion sensor ghosts moaned from lawns, and every window flickered with candlelight. It was small-town America at its most picture-perfect, quiet, cozy, and safe. At least that's what Daniel Price thought when he moved there. He'd bought his house on Old Brook Lane just 3 weeks earlier, a pale yellow single-story home at the very end of the cul-de-sac, the kind of house that creaked when you walked and smelled faintly of cedar and paint thinner. After the divorce, he didn't have much left except his savings and his tools, so when the realtor said the property was priced to sell, he didn't ask too many questions. The previous owner, a widow named Mrs. Latham, had passed away the year before. The house had been empty ever since. Daniel didn't mind. He wanted quiet. He wanted a restart. And for the first time in years, he wanted to feel like life was normal again. He wasn't even planning to celebrate Halloween, but the neighborhood changed his mind. Around 6 that evening, he heard children laughing outside, saw parents pulling wagons full of candy and toddlers, and felt that small ache of nostalgia. He decided, why not? Maybe pretending things were fine for one night would make it true. So he found a pumpkin at the grocery store, carved a simple grin into it, and placed a candle inside. He even bought a family-sized bag of chocolate bars and set them out in a plastic bowl by the front door. The trick-or-treaters came in small waves. A princess, a vampire, a tiny cowboy. They smiled, said thank you in muffled voices, and disappeared into the fog. By 9 p.m., the street was quiet again. The porch lights of his neighbors clicked off one by one. He sat back on the couch, turned on an old black and white horror film, and let the flickering light fill the room. Then came the knock. 3 slow, heavy knocks. Not the usual quick rapping of small hands. This was different. Measured, almost polite. Daniel frowned, glanced at the clock, 9:43 p.m. Late for kids. He grabbed the candy bowl anyway and opened the door. At first, he didn't see anyone. The street beyond the porch was empty except for the thin veil of fog creeping along the asphalt. The air was still. Even the wind had stopped. Then he looked down. A small figure stood at the edge of the porch. A child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing a long, tattered black cloak and a white papier-mâché mask. The mask had no features except 2 hollow eyes and a slit for a mouth. The child held a cloth candy bag. Old, handmade, stained dark in several places. "Trick or treat," the child said. The voice was muffled like it came from inside a box. Daniel chuckled nervously. "Hey there, nice costume." No reply. The child just held the bag higher like an order. He reached into the bowl and dropped a handful of candy inside. It landed with a heavy thump, not the rustle of wrappers, something denser. He froze. For a split second, he thought he saw the bottom of the bag twitch, as though something inside shifted slightly. "You okay, kid?" Daniel asked. "Where are your parents?" The mask tilted a little to the side, the way a dog tilts its head when it doesn't understand a sound. Then the child said softly, "You have something that's mine." Daniel blinked. "What?" But before he could say another word, the child turned and walked down the steps, not running, just moving away into the fog. Small footsteps echoing on the pavement until the darkness swallowed them. He stood there for a while, trying to convince himself it was a prank. The neighborhood kids, maybe. Some new TikTok thing. But when he looked at the candy bowl, it was empty. Completely empty. He turned back inside and shut the door, locking it behind him. The rest of the night was silent until 12:03 a.m. It started with the sound of something sliding across the porch. Then came the knock again, 3 times. Slow, deliberate. He sat frozen on the couch, heart pounding. After a long pause, Curiosity won over fear. He crept toward the door, careful not to make noise, and peered through the peephole. No one there. But when he opened the door, a small cloth bag sat on the porch. The same bag the child had carried, tied neatly with a red string. He picked it up cautiously. It was damp, cold, and heavier than he expected. "Kid, if this is some kind of joke," he muttered under his breath. He took it inside, turned on the kitchen light, and placed it on the table. The fabric was old, discolored, with faint brown stains around the seams. He untied the string. The smell hit him first, metallic, rotten, like pennies soaked in mold. Inside was a single small object wrapped in tissue paper. He unwrapped it slowly. It was a tooth. Human, with the root still attached. He stumbled back, gagging. His first thought was to call the police, but his phone had no signal. No bars, nothing. Then the power flickered. The lights dimmed, went out, and the TV across the room flickered on by itself. The old horror movie replaced by static. Through the static, a faint shape appeared. Grainy black and white footage of his own porch. The same small child stood there again, facing the camera, holding the bag. Only this time the bag was moving. Something inside was writhing, pushing against the fabric. Daniel froze, his pulse hammered in his ears. Then the figure slowly turned toward the lens, and the screen went black. He rushed to the window, pulled the curtain aside. The street was empty, but at the far end of his driveway, through the fog, the figure was standing again, perfectly still. "Go away," he shouted, his voice cracking. The child didn't move. He blinked and it was gone. When morning came, he barely slept. The tooth sat on the kitchen counter, wrapped in paper towels. He convinced himself to drive to the police station, but by the time he went to grab it, the bag was empty. That night, he decided to leave the porch light off and ignore anyone who knocked. He locked every door and window, shut the curtains, and sat in silence. At exactly midnight, the front door rattled. Then came the knock again, 3 times, slower than before. He held his breath, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. It grew louder. And then from the back door, 3 more knocks. Then from the window. Then from upstairs. The sound surrounded him, dozens of tiny fists pounding the walls in perfect rhythm. He backed into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, trembling. The pounding stopped. Complete silence. Then a whisper, a voice, faint, childlike, right behind his ear. "You forgot to say thank you." He turned, swinging the knife wildly, but there was nothing there. Only the open candy bowl on the counter. And inside, mixed among the chocolate bars, were small white teeth, dozens of them. He screamed and ran from the house, down the road, barefoot and shaking. A neighbor found him hours later, sitting on the curb, muttering the same phrase over and over. "It wasn't a mask. It wasn't a mask." Police found the house undisturbed. No signs of forced entry. But on the porch, there was a fresh candy bag tied with a red string. Inside were 2 things, a handful of candy and Daniel Price's wedding ring. The bag was logged into evidence, but when the officer returned the next day to retrieve it, the evidence locker was empty. All that remained was a folded piece of paper, written in shaky, childlike handwriting. "Trick or treat." The house on Old Brook Lane was sold again the following summer. The new owners said they never had any problems, except on Halloween night, when someone left a small cloth bag on their porch. They never opened it. They just burned it at the end of the driveway every year. But neighbors say when the fire goes out, they can still hear something faint coming from the smoke. A whisper, a laugh, and the soft rustle of a candy bag being filled, 1 piece at a time. Every small town has that one house, the kind kids dare each other to visit. The kind adults pretend doesn't bother them, but still cross the street to avoid after dark. In the town of Millwood, That house stood at the end of Briar Street, half hidden behind leafless trees and a rusted fence. It had been abandoned since 1984, when the Henderson family died in a fire that supposedly started in the basement furnace. Locals said it wasn't the fire that killed them, though, that something else happened first. No one could ever agree on what. The property sat untouched for nearly 40 years. But this Halloween, 4 high school seniors decided they wanted to make history by being the first ones to go inside after midnight. Their names were Luke, Ryan, Tara, and Evelyn, friends since middle school, now a few weeks away from graduation. It started as a joke. Ryan found an old photo online of the house before the fire. White siding, red shutters, a small porch. He sent it to their group chat with the message, "We go in, we film it, we become legends." By the time the sun set, they had their plan. Meet at Luke's truck at 11:30, drive to the edge of Briar Street, sneak in through the fence, and live stream everything to their friends. Evelyn almost backed out. She'd grown up hearing her grandmother's stories, how she swore she'd seen someone in the burned-out windows years after the fire. But the others teased her, called her the horror movie girl, and she laughed it off. Still, something in her stomach twisted as they drove down that narrow road, the fog rolling low across the cracked pavement. The neighborhood was silent. No decorations, no porch lights, just the sound of dry leaves scraping across asphalt. When they reached the house, it looked even worse up close. The siding had peeled away to reveal the blackened wood beneath. Every window was shattered. The front door hung crookedly, the words, "Keep out," spray painted in faded red across it. "Probably some drunk teens from last year," Luke said, grinning as he climbed the steps. The boards creaked under his weight. He turned the doorknob. It moved easily. Inside, the air was thick with soot and mildew. The flashlight beams caught swirls of dust drifting through the air. Wallpaper peeled in strips like dead skin. In the corner of the living room, a child's rocking horse stood perfectly upright, untouched by the layers of grime. Ryan laughed nervously. "Bet that's worth money." Tara shushed him. "Just film, okay? Let's make this quick." They wandered through the rooms, filming the remains. A melted lamp, a cracked mirror, a half-burned family photo still stuck to the wall. Evelyn was the last to enter the kitchen. Something about it felt wrong. The stove was still there, blackened with rust, but the air, it wasn't stale. It smelled faintly of burnt sugar. "Guys," she whispered, "does it smell like candy?" Before anyone could answer, something clicked behind her. The stove knob had turned by itself. The pilot light flickered, then the burners ignited, all 4 at once glowing blue. They screamed and stumbled back. Luke ran forward and turned them off, but as soon as he did, every light in the house blinked on. Bulbs that hadn't worked in decades. In that moment, for just 2 seconds, the entire room looked new again. The wallpaper wasn't burnt, the dishes were clean. A table stood neatly set for dinner, and standing at the head of the table was a man. His face was gray, blistered, and he was smiling, not out of joy, but as if his muscles had locked that way when the fire consumed him. He raised his hand slowly, as if to wave. Then the lights went out. When they turned their flashlights back on, the table was gone. Everything was blackened again. Ryan swore he'd caught it on camera, but when they replayed the footage, it was just static. "Let's go," Evelyn said, shaking. "Now." But Luke insisted they check the basement. That was where the fire started, after all. The door to the basement was swollen shut, but Ryan kicked it open. A wave of cold air hit them, the kind of cold that made their teeth ache. The steps groaned as they descended one by one into darkness. Halfway down, Tara's flashlight flickered. "Hold on," she said, tapping it. The beam came back, shining directly on something carved into the cement wall. It was a name. Evelyn. They all froze. That's not funny, she stammered. Who did that? No one spoke. Then, from the far corner of the basement, they heard a soft dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Ryan swung his light toward it. There was an old furnace, its metal door hanging open. Inside, something moved. A small shape crawled out, blackened, child-sized, its limbs stiff like charred wood. It dragged itself forward, leaving streaks of ash on the floor. As it turned toward them, they saw its face, or what was left of it. The eyes were gone. The mouth opened soundlessly, a hole burned straight through. Tara screamed and bolted up the stairs. Luke grabbed Evelyn's hand, pulling her after him. But Ryan stayed frozen, filming. Through the viewfinder, he could see them running, but he also saw something else. Behind them, shapes forming out of the smoke. A woman, a boy, a tall man, all burned, all watching. Then the camera cut out. They didn't stop running until they reached the truck. Tara was sobbing, shaking uncontrollably. Evelyn's hand was bleeding from where a splinter had lodged in her palm. Luke fumbled with the keys, started the engine, and then realized Ryan wasn't with them. Where's Ryan? They looked back toward the house. Through the fog, they could see the faint flicker of light in the basement window, his flashlight. Don't, Evelyn said, don't go back. But Luke couldn't leave him. He jumped out and ran back up the path. The house was silent again. The door swung gently in the wind. He stepped inside, shouting Ryan's name. No answer, just the sound of creaking floorboards overhead. Then from the kitchen came a faint hum. A voice, a man's voice. Luke followed the sound, heart racing. It was coming from the stove, the burners glowing faintly red. The voice was singing, a low, broken hum like an old lullaby. He turned slowly. In the doorway stood the man again, burned, smiling, eyes hollow. Behind him in the hallway, the walls glowed faintly orange, flames rising, but without heat, without smoke. He backed away, whispering, "Ryan?" Something clattered at his feet. It was the camera, melted and cracked. The screen flickered once, showing a final frame. Ryan's terrified face lit by orange light, and behind him, a dozen shadowy figures watching. Luke stumbled out of the house, screaming, running toward the truck. They drove until the house vanished behind them. When they stopped under the streetlight 2 miles away, they realized the backseat door was slightly open, and inside, on the seat, was the same camera. Only now it was cold to the touch. Evelyn turned it on. The footage played perfectly. They watched Ryan walk into the basement, then stop, raise the camera, and whisper, "It's not empty, they're still here." The screen went dark. Police found no trace of Ryan. The footage was dismissed as edited. The town avoided talking about it. But every year since, on Halloween night, the lights in the Briar Street house flicker back on for exactly 5 minutes. And those who stand outside swear they can hear a man humming softly from the kitchen. The same lullaby that ended the Henderson family's dinner and started their fire. Every Halloween, the small town of Ashford Falls held a parade. It wasn't televised, it wasn't famous, just a local tradition. A single stretch of old Main Street lined with flickering lanterns and floats made of cardboard and paper mache, all built by hand. Children in masks waved plastic wands. Adults clapped along to off-key marching bands. And for one night, the sleepy town felt alive. But there was one rule, one that everyone knew but no one questioned. When the parade ended, no one followed it past the bridge. It was written on flyers, repeated in schools, whispered by parents to their children. When the floats passed the old hollow bridge, the parade was over. The rest of the route, they said, belonged to them. No one could ever explain who they were. In 2019, Lydia Moore, a local journalist, decided to find out. She was 33, ambitious, recently transferred from a city paper to Ashford's small-town Gazette. Halloween was her first assignment. Cover the local parade, get a few photos, write something heartwarming. But Lydia wasn't interested in heartwarming. She'd heard the stories. How some residents claimed to hear the parade continuing long after midnight. Slow footsteps, distant drums, faint laughter echoing through the trees. How one farmer said he saw lights moving across his field in perfect formation, long after the official event ended. So that night, she brought her camera, a small recorder, and a notebook. Her plan was simple: film the whole parade from start to finish, and follow it past the bridge to see what really happened. The night began like any other Halloween. The air was sharp, smelling of wood smoke and wet leaves. The floats rolled slowly through Main Street, pulled by tractors wrapped in orange lights. The crowd cheered, children threw confetti. The mayor waved from a convertible dressed as a pirate. Lydia walked alongside, snapping photos, but something felt off. There was no music this year. The marching band had canceled due to illness, according to the announcer. Yet she could still hear a rhythm, faint, behind the normal sounds of laughter and chatter. A low, steady beat, like a drum played under the ground. She brushed it off. Tradition, she thought, maybe a speaker somewhere. When the parade reached the edge of town, people began to disperse. Parents gathered their kids, the lights dimmed, and floats parked near the lot by the hollow bridge, a narrow stone crossing that arched over a dried creek. The parade was officially over, but as Lydia packed up her camera, she saw something strange. Down the road beyond the bridge, where there should have been only darkness, there were lights. Dozens of them. Lanterns. They flickered in a slow, rhythmic line, moving farther into the misty woods beyond the bridge. She turned to a nearby vendor. "Hey, are those people still marching?" The woman didn't even look up from her stall. "Parade's over, miss." But the vendor's eyes shifted and her voice hardened. "It's over." That should have been the moment Lydia went home. Instead, she crossed the bridge. The moment her boots touched the other side, the air changed. It grew colder, heavier, as if the mist thickened just for her. The town sounds faded. The laughter, the chatter, the hum of the streetlights, gone. All she could hear now was the slow, distant rhythm of drums. She followed the lanterns down the old dirt path into the woods. The fog glowed faintly orange where the light swayed ahead. She couldn't see the figures carrying them, only their outlines, tall and thin, moving in perfect unison. "Hello?" she called. "Is this part of the parade?" No answer. But the drumming stopped, and that was somehow worse. Her flashlight flickered. For a split second, she thought she saw faces in the fog, pale, expressionless masks staring back at her. Then they vanished. She kept walking, too curious or too proud to turn back. Eventually, the path opened into a clearing. In the center stood a massive oak tree, its branches bare, its trunk split with age. Around it, dozens of people stood holding lanterns, all wearing the same white masks. But when she looked closer, she realized they weren't holding the lanterns. They were the lanterns. Their hands were gone, wrists ending in hollow stumps that glowed from within, burning with cold orange light. One by one, the masked figures turned toward her. The air went silent, even the wind stopped. A tall one at the front stepped closer. Its mask was cracked, revealing blackened skin underneath, like something that had been burned long ago. It tilted its head and spoke in a voice that didn't belong to any human throat. "You shouldn't have crossed the bridge." Lydia stumbled backward, snapping photo after photo. Her flash caught glimpses, not of people but of hollow things. Skin stretched thin over bone, eyes empty. The tall figure raised its arm and the lanterns dimmed. Then, slowly, the entire group began to move again, forming a procession. A parade, silent, perfectly in step. They passed her without a sound, disappearing back into the fog. But as they did, she felt something brush against her arm. It was cold, like ice. When she looked down, her skin had turned gray where they touched her, and the veins beneath glowed faintly orange. She dropped her camera and ran. By the time she reached the bridge, the fog had thickened so much she could barely see the ground. The moment she stepped onto the stones, the drums started again, but this time they weren't distant. They were right beneath her feet. She sprinted the rest of the way across and collapsed on the road. The sound stopped instantly. When she looked back, there was nothing behind her but darkness. The mist was gone. The road was empty. Her camera was found the next morning on the far side of the bridge, lying in the dirt. The police reviewed the footage. Most of it was static. But in the last few frames, just before it cut out, a reflection appeared in the lens. A parade of mask-faced figures marching silently into the trees. The town dismissed it as a hoax. The Ashford Gazette never published her story. Lydia Moore was last seen 2 days later, walking down Main Street at dawn, still wearing her press badge. Witnesses said she looked pale, dazed, and was humming something under her breath. When one of the shopkeepers tried to talk to her, she stopped in the middle of the road, turned slowly and smiled. He said her eyes were completely hollow. Then she walked toward the bridge and disappeared into the morning fog. Every Halloween since, the townspeople still gather for the parade. But now when it ends, no one claps, no one cheers. They just watch in silence as the floats cross the bridge, and one by one, their lanterns fade into the mist. Those who linger say they sometimes see another figure walking with them, a woman in a long brown coat, carrying a camera that no longer flashes. And if you listen closely as the last float vanishes beyond the bridge, you can hear her voice whisper softly through the trees. It's not a parade. It's a procession. You've just crossed the boundary between reality and the unknown. If you felt the fear tonight, make sure to subscribe before you leave, because on this channel every story is just the beginning. New nightmares arrive every few nights, each one darker than the last. Until then, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and your mind open. You are now part of the FearBound family.